of learning how a book is written as well. And that's one of the things I like about interviewing authors. Everyone
Okay.
seems to have a different
Hmm.
backstory on how they created their book.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great thing. Hey, Code Keepers, we're in it to win it with my good brother Bobby. And I tell you, man, this book is for the bookshelf. You definitely want to get this book on your bookshelf. We're going to talk all about it in just a few seconds. And you're saying, hey, Seiko, what's this have to do with empowerment? What's this have to do with Black empowerment? Stay
Mm.
tuned. All right. Welcome to Get On Code, the Fly Guy Show, which is a series of melanated conversations focused on empowerment, health, wealth, and knowledge of self.
People think in binary choices because they are conditioned to.
And on the wall was a picture of a wolf and a lion. I think the wolf was the Democratic Party, the lion was the Republicans.
But the drug trade and all these illegal stuff that people do, that's still economics. It's just that they couldn't do it in the traditional system.
We're talking about melanated wealth.
So we can build wealth, but we just, for some reason, don't seem to be able to transfer it.
You had a great experience. Fine. That means nothing.
What were you told as a child about education? You had to be how many times better?
Every impression without an expression becomes depression.
Hey, yo, Code Keepers, we're doing something a little different tonight. We asked you to hop in. So if you want to make a comment, you want to ask the good brother some questions, or if you have some thoughts about plugging the school to prison pipeline, hey, you see the link right there, right? Click that link, streamyard.com, a couple of letters. Get you on the show. We love to hear from you. It's a pop-in show. So we want you to pop on in here and give us your thoughts as we sit, learn, and earn from the good brother. I call him Bob because I've known him for a while. Brother Bob, man, why don't you drop your credentials, tell us who you are, what you up to, let us know who we're talking to.
Wonderful. Thank you. My name is Reverend Bobby Raye Huntley. I'm an inspirational speaker, author, poet. I just retired from Virginia Beach City Public Schools after 19 years. So I just retired this past October. And as they say, I'm living my best life. So I'm enjoying that. I am the author of 5 books, 5 self-published books. One of the books we'll be certainly talking about this evening, The Shaping of Our Future Generation, putting the plug in the school to prison pipeline. I'm excited about it. It's hot off the press, and I'm ready to roll with it.
Ready to roll. He said he's living his best life. He ain't going back and forth for you craziness.
Yo, say all that now.
Ain't going back and forth. I'll say it for you. He's not going back and forth with craziness.
There you go. That works for me.
Oh, Code Keepers. Look, hey, if you want to pop in, then we just asked you. Click the link. Pop on in there. We love to hear what you have to think, what you have to say. In regards to today's comment, today's topic is plugging the school to prison pipeline. And we have an author of this great show this great book who's going to talk to us about it. So, hey, Bobby, man, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book, man? Tell us a little bit about the book.
Thank you. The book, I'm told from those who read the book, there's basically really 2 stories within the book. I decided to write the book after, I knew at some point towards the later end of my career with the Virginia Beach Public Schools that I would be writing a book, somewhat of a tell-all story of some trials and tribulations that I experienced, some up and down, some good times, some wonderful things. While working with the Virginia Beach City Public Schools, I served a couple of capacities as a security assistant and school suspension coordinator, also dean of students / work adjustment teacher within those 19 years. Also within that time frame, 14 years, I had a mentoring program, character development mentoring program for the boys called the Gentlemen's Club, which was widely publicized, not only locally, but nationally as well. And so it was my experience that I encountered. I knew that I had to write a book to share what transpired, what the many possibilities were that I was able to overcome, and helping the youth and some of the struggles that I encountered as well. And so that's why I decided to write this tell-all book, to tell the truth about my experience and, as far as what I saw within the education system with the GEP's public school system.
All right. And I tell you what, Code Keepers, it's a very, very great book to check into. So, like I said, this was definitely one for the bookshelves. The shaping of our future generation, putting a plug in the school to prison pipeline. And that's what we're going to chat on today, man. Putting a plug in the school to prison pipeline. He's written a manifesto, so we know how to deal with it. But I'm sure we all have some other thoughts as well. So pop in with your comments, pop on. If you want to hop in, then all you have to do is join us. And we'll put you on the screen and we'll talk about it. So this school to prison pipeline. I did a little research,
Okay.
I did a little research, and it showed me that Black students represent 31% of school-related arrests. 31% of school-related arrests. So when we deal with that prison, that school to prison pipeline, 31%, that's a deep number.
It is.
That's a deep number.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that, bro?
Well, let's start with this. First of all, what happens is that a lot of our students, our Black students, find themselves in trouble. They can be in the same trouble as a white student, and yet we know that they're handled differently. Same offense, maybe tardy to class on a few occasions or what have you, running the halls or whatever it may be, disrupting the classroom. It's been some of my experience where I've seen Black students go into the office for the same offense, and a referral has been written on them, and then they're dealt with in that manner. Whereas perhaps some white students, they was just verbally reprimanded, and that was it. The Black student perhaps received in-school suspension, and or depending on the number of referrals that was written, could find themselves out of school for a day or two or three or what have you. And so these referrals get to mounting up. And so that's where the problem lies, where a lot of our students aren't really given the same break or benefit as white students have been given. And this has been my experience. And it's not necessarily in all the schools, because I've been at several schools with GEB's public schools, but it's been in a couple that I personally witnessed. And this is why I took on the program of the Gentlemen's Club to help mentor to our students, especially the Black students, to help guide them and nurture them in a way that they perhaps can avoid getting any type of trouble whatsoever, so they would not have to go to the office. Because once they get to the office, 7, 8 out of 10 times, they're going to be dealt with in a way that the white students was not being dealt with.
Hey, but I've heard this. I'm sure you as well. So hopefully you have a retort to this. Does that just mean that our kids need to behave better? That our kids don't know how to act? Is that what it is?
Well, that's to some degree, but as I said, they can go in for the same offense, and I've seen it happen. Where you send 2 students to the office for picking on one another, disruption in the classroom, but they're handled differently, and that's what I'm saying. So it's not all the time to where children are children. To some degree, they're going to misbehave. They're going to act up. These things are quite natural. But it's how we decide to deal with them. And I really didn't get a good grip on this until I was at Lansdowne Middle School, and I was an in-school suspension coordinator. And I would see the students come to me from having a referral. And as a result of that, they end up getting put in my class for in-school suspension coordinator. And now my job was to monitor them, make sure they did their work. But then I began to pull them, have a roundtable discussion, and ask them, about the offense, what took place, what transpired, and just listening to them and observing. And I began to just really take a close look at what was being happening. And there was a lot of referrals being written, and a lot of times, of course, they deserve it. They did the disruption of whatever it was. But again, perhaps some of the white students did the same thing, but they weren't receiving in-school suspension coordinator or OSS, whatever the case may be. And I saw this at a couple of the schools, but more so at Kempsville Middle School.
Oh, he's naming names.
I don't have a problem with that. I
He's
don't have a
naming
problem with
names.
that.
Hey,
Yeah.
hopping in with us right now is the good brother Jerry Dunkley. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm good. Can you guys hear me?
Absolutely, man. So, what are your thoughts, man? How do we plug the school to prison pipeline, brother?
Well, I'm going to tell you, and I'm really adjusting my camera here. I feel like it's possible that I may have some radical ideas because, as you know, I'm in the public school system. I'm a teacher at Granby High School. I do not want to offend anybody, but long before I became a teacher, you know, when I was just a student, I heard a lot of people talking about what your guest is saying, and saying that Black students were being unfairly disciplined. Okay. The schools that I have been a part of, or the schools that I've worked at, or the schools that I've even done anything at, are majority Black schools, like Granby High School or Lake Taylor High School, or any of the schools in Norfolk. And that's not what I'm finding. My experience right now, and at any school that I was at, even schools that I worked at in Akron, Ohio, they were majority Black schools. So the Black kids were not being disciplined more than the white kids. And I hear that an awful lot. Now, again, there's the research, there's the numbers, and there's the anecdote. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's just an anecdote on my part. And I really do feel like this is just my own radical idea, so let me put that out there. I fully believe that we need to focus on some other stuff and stop necessarily always saying, well, unfortunately, the Black kids are being disciplined, not like the white kids, because we keep saying that and nothing is changing. My experience, quite honestly, and I hate to use this phrase because it came from a conservative person that said it, and I'm not trying to get into ideology here, but I feel like that's the racism of low expectations, because we keep saying, well, these poor Black kids can't get it, so we got to give them a break. And yes, I do know that our kids a lot of times come from bad circumstances, and that our kids have situations at home that they're dealing with, and our kids have some challenges that other kids don't have. But what I am finding out is that if we don't hold our kids accountable sometime, kind of show them some love, but also show them some results that they end up going out and getting a job or not getting a job and not knowing why, and looking for a second chance when there's minimal second chances out there. But we in the public school system gave them the message that they could pretty much get away with stuff and get a second chance all the time. And that is not necessarily true out there in the world. So that's just my brief take on it. I didn't mean to take up more time than I was allotted, but that's kind of the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah, we about to kick you off the screen, bro.
No, he's fine. Let me respond to that. Thank you for joining us. And I don't disagree with nothing you said, but what you did say was that the schools you been a part of was predominantly Black. I think that's the key point. And I would assume, let me finish, please. And I would assume that they were predominantly Black teachers as well that were there to teach our students. Not the case in the schools that I've been. Like I said, I've been working at 3 or 4 different schools, and that necessarily wasn't the case where there were more white teachers than Black teachers. And especially at my last school, where we only had one Black core teacher that taught math, science, English, social studies, only one Black teacher. And now, to my understanding, I don't think they have a Black teacher there at all. So that has a lot to do with the fact that you have teachers that the students can see that represent them. And so, I mean, I did a gentleman's club for 14 years. one of the things that we did with our first field trip, I always take them to Virginia Beach Correctional Facility, to the jail, not as a scared straight program, but to show them that we're not on the right path, the wrong path lies ahead. And so I don't disagree with what you're saying as far as how we can be at times where we perhaps want to make an excuse. I'm not making an excuse at all. As you were speaking from your experience, I'm certainly speaking from my experience and what I've witnessed myself. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about what happened anywhere else. I'm speaking about my experience.
Okay. I have a question about one thing that you mentioned, because I really do feel like a lot of this stuff feeds upon itself, or it feeds upon other aspects of the entire picture. You mentioned that there is a dearth or a lack of Black teachers, especially Black male teachers. Why do you think that is? I have some ideas, but why do you think that is?
Well, there's a lot of reason, perhaps as the reason why. Perhaps not wanting to go into the field. As an example, myself, I had an opportunity that was presented to me if I wanted to become a teacher. I'm a Black man, as you can see, and I didn't have a desire to teach in that capacity. I didn't want to be in a classroom. So that was not my calling, my direction. So I mean, I'm sure there's opportunities for I have a nephew who's a teacher in Cincinnati, Ohio, and he's ready to become a principal or going through the studies to become an administrator. And so these are choices that we have on our own to decide what field of study or what we want to do with our life. I'm also a retired Marine. And so, there's different avenues that we go, but there's many reasons as to why there are no Black, not enough or a lot of Black male teachers. I'm sure the answer is perhaps endless.
Yeah, am I still on the mic?
Yes, sir. You still on, brother?
I know that a lot of people that I know, and I look at a lot of stuff from the research point of view, because it's kind of, a little bit of what I do. A lot of Black men, if they take the time to go get a degree or even an advanced degree, they're not going to go into education because they don't feel like it pays enough. It doesn't pay enough for the investment that it requires to get that education, that bachelor's degree or that master's degree. A lot of young men, if a Black man does go and get his education, he's not going to go somewhere and start out at $50,000 a year. So you do now. What ends up happening oftentimes is you'll have an older guy like myself who can afford to do it because we've done other stuff, maybe retired from some other places. So yeah, some of those guys will go into education, but a young man in his 20s or his early 30s, many of them will go into education, but then what they'll do is like you said, they'll go into administration. And once you're in administration, you're separated from the day-to-day activities of a student.
Absolutely.
So you might get a student in your office and all you know is that student is got a referral. He's got a problem. See, some of us are talking to students day to day. So we get to know them. We know them as people. And if a kid is outside the box, if you're in that kid's face every day or you see that kid every day, you can kind of talk to him. You can take him to the side and talk to him like an uncle or like an older brother or something and say, hey, bro, what you doing? Listen, here's the pathway you need to go on. Or you can just form that relationship with him. But again, they're seeing very few of us. They see Mr. Varner as an example. They might see me. They see the guy next door to me, Ed. We all stayed in education, but there's not a whole lot of us that stayed in education when we were young, and they don't see us.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of brothers in administration. There's a whole bunch of principals, and God bless them.
Hey, I'm trying to be the next one.
Yeah. But there's not many of us that say, yeah, I'm staying in the classroom.
Right.
And so we look at administration as such a promotion. No, that's a choice. Okay, we all could have got a master's degree in administration, but some of us decided to stay in the classroom because we know we're touching kids.
Right.
You see what I'm
And see
saying?
with right, and see with me for 19 years, I'm there with the students in the various job position titles that I held, and again, 14 years as a excuse me, as a director of a mentoring program, the Gentlemen's Club, and so which was a huge success. I've had over 600 students come through my program, and every school that we started the Gentlemen's Club, we started the Ladies Club program as well. So, I certainly understand what you're saying. So every student that was at that school, the schools I was at, that they definitely knew Mr. Huntley, and they
Yeah.
definitely knew I was an advocate for them. I was always there in their presence and would go in the office with them for the disciplinary actions and things of that nature. So I've always been an advocate for students.
Hey, look, Code Keepers. Today we're doing something different. We have a hop in show. Good brother Jerry Dunkley hopped in. Thank you, Jerry. You can hang around. You ain't got to bounce. I'm gonna
Ain't
act
going
like
nowhere.
I'm kicking you out, but you can hang around. And look, we got the good brother Joel Jones. And look, our major guest is brother Reverend Bobby Ray Huntley. You can see him in the top. This is his book. This is his book right here. The Shaping of Our Future Generations. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at your black bookstore, your melanated bookstore. You can get it with us. So make sure you find that joint. Make sure you find that song. It's definitely a good song, brother. It's definitely a good book. Brother Joel, man, I know you wanted to pop in. And Joel has on a shirt that says "Stay Strong," and it has a gun on there. So he's gonna bring some
On, baby. Stay
firepower.
strong, stay on. Even at home, stay strong, stay on.
Hey,
Hey,
look, bro,
gentlemen,
Joel,
first of all, I
how
want
do
to say
we
thank you.
plug the school to prison pipeline?
Well, I'm gonna give you my raw experience with it from school, being in a couple of um, troubled environments. I was in jail like 2 or 3 times when I was in high school. So let me tell you, this pipeline, I was definitely on that pipeline. And I would say number one, it did stem. I didn't grow up with my father. My mom had uh, a boyfriend, husband for like 20 years, whatever you want to call that. And I was initiated into a gang about 12 years old, going back and forth to Chicago. So in little, the gang violence and the drugs was really rampant in the 90s, the 80s through the 90s. So I was definitely up in that. And a large part of that was that the stress that I was dealing with at home. I was the oldest of 13 children. And there was a lot of pressure put on me to help take care of my mom, take care of my brothers and sisters. And oftentimes working at McDonald's, making $4.25 an hour at the time just wasn't cutting it. That was my mentality. I was thinking that. So where else could I get money? Well, we was out on the streets.
Yeah.
What? I was cutting grass too. I was mowing lawns, raking leaves. It's just that it wasn't coming fast enough as I would hope, right? So impatient. So the things were a very, very lucrative, a beautiful thing that attracted me because I really wanted to be a part of something, to belong to something else. And so you want to talk about that pipeline? It really started right there for me, drinking. I started drinking at the age of 12. I smoked my first joint at that same time. And all those things attributed to the end factor of me getting into a fight, end up going to jail, in a store stealing something, end up in jail, in school. However, I can say this, that even in all of this negativity, there was some positive in it. There were people telling him, maybe you shouldn't be doing this. There were people telling me this. So I would say that growing up in the hood at that time, I didn't look at these as mentors because I was either selling drugs, out here riding the hoopties, carrying guns, sticking on Mr. Badass and doing these things. So I was creating that pipeline. And I know that the government was doing studies on kids in the 4th grade. Say, hey, we need our building prison based on this in this area because these kids are going to end up in prison from what we see the environment. And I'm saying now it's the government that's creating this pipeline. They put these kids in 4th grade to get these kids to fill these private prison seats. Now, if we take a look back, if we're going to do studies for kids that are going to end up in prison, well, let's do studies to prevent kids from ending up in prison. So we got it backwards. And I'm going to say this. As I look back during that time in my life, it was our Black people who was in office agreeing to this crazy stuff that was the 90s crime area. It was our people who was doing this. So when I hear a lot of people talking about all these systemic racism, no. I grew up in an environment where I saw Black faces killing Black faces. I saw Black faces in doors. And I was a part of this. So if we can stop that trajectory from the school to pipeline trajectory or school to prison, it starts with taking money, or I'm sorry, it starts with a different paradigm.
All right.
Instead of preparing our kids for prison, let's prepare them for success. And that's taking that prison stuff out of the way, because that's what's happening.
That's exactly, if I may, that's exactly what my book is about, putting a plug to the school to prison pipeline. And so I say that because with my program that I had in the school system, in the middle school, and I also did it at alternative high school, it was proven to be a huge success. And so what I'm talking about is having that program and changing the mindset, getting to the students where they at, understanding where they come from. One of the models that we have in the program was, it doesn't matter where in life you come from, but what does matter is where you decide to end up. And so students need to have these tools. They need to see someone that represent them, that look like them, that can speak truth to their situation. Another book that I wrote is titled Mothers Please, which is a self-help book for single mothers raising sons. And in that book, I list 8 mistakes that single mothers make. And so I certainly agree with you in what you're saying, because I came from a home, a single parent home, where my mother did the best in raising us, 2 sons and 2 daughters. And I say that, my mother did not teach me how to become a man. I joined the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps taught me how to be a man. And so I've taken those life skills that I have. I've taken those life skills. Did you say hoorah?
Go Navy.
All right, my brother. I've taken those life skills and I brought them into the school system and worked with this program, a program that I tell you I didn't start, but it was passed on to me by a dear friend of mine, Reverend Paul Harrington, who started the program. And he passed it on to me. And for 14 years, I ran with it. And a few years we worked on it together. So what you're saying is correct. And I said earlier, I don't know if you listened, if you were on at the time, but one of the first things I do is every January, we take these young men to jail. And I had honor roll students in my program. I had students that weren't doing well at all. The program was open to every male student, regardless of grade, race, creed, or color. It didn't matter. As long as you were male at that school, I wanted you in my program. And it turned their lives around. It really did. And I have letters from parents, teachers, faculty, and staff that talk about the success of the program. And so what you're saying is why I had the program, the Gentlemen's Club, to turn their mindset around and to guide them in the right way they should go. And I do have a degree in religion, a BA degree in religion, as well as a BA degree in sociology as well.
That's beautiful. Good brothers. We have Joel, and hey Joel, what's the name of your gun club?
Strong Arms Gun Club, Hampton Roads. And we're with the National African Association, NAGA.
And I also want to give you all your salutes. So Bobby and Joel, I guess you were both Navy men. Jerry, weren't you military?
Excuse me, did you say Navy? Did you say Navy?
Hey,
you didn't
Department
say
of the Navy. Department of the Navy, yep.
Marine, you know better than that. You know better than that.
I don't know better than that, but I guess others do. Brother Jerry, didn't you serve in the military as well?
Yes, sir. I'm retired Navy.
Oh, Navy. Retired Navy after 25 years.
Listen, my wife is Navy. She spent 13 years in the Navy. We met in Italy, so I don't have a problem with the Navy. I love them.
All right. One of the viewers wanted to give us a little data. In VA, Black students comprise 22% of total student enrollment, but 54% of all students suspended. And they cited a source. I love that. They citing sources. Discipline, disproportionality, measurement, and reporting. So that kind of goes right along with something that I found. So I found that, well, let me go back. Yeah, I'm gonna go back. Here we go.
I seen
The
that.
school to prison pipeline. The school to prison pipeline pretty much says that zero tolerance discipline policies have led to more of our melanated students being kicked out of the school, either by suspension or by expulsion. And by being placed out of the school environment, they have a higher opportunity to have some contact with the juvenile justice system that same year or the following year. So, what are your thoughts on that? Why don't
But
we start with? Go ahead.
can I hit it? Okay,
Yeah,
I saw
hit it and
that
quit it.
study,
Hit it and quit it.
and also across America, they did the same study. So those things happen. If it was a predominantly black school, guess what? You get in the same ratio. Where if the black principal, black teachers are predominant in the school system, guess what? It's the black student who is showing the most negative actions, which cause disciplinary results. So I was going with it, but it's still across the nation. The same thing's happening, and large part of this involves there being a lack of fathers in the home. This is proven. This is a proven fact, and I seen that study as well a few weeks ago. So basically, what I'm saying is the lack of a strong father presence, role model, they're going to act out behavior problem. Because if you got a father in the home, most of the time, kids are not doing those things right there. They're not having discipline issues in school.
Your thoughts? Thank you, Joel. Brother Dunkley, what are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I talked to. It's like a definite difference. It's almost like somebody is writing a book. There's a definite difference in the attitude, the knowledge base, the discipline from children or from students that have a dad at home. It's like night and day. It really is. And this is not empirical research. I mean, I've done reading. We've all done reading that tells us that that's the case. But it's also my anecdote. I talked to a kid today. There's one of my students. This is just an anecdote, but it serves as an example of what I see and what I see every day and what I've read. I talked to a kid today who's been skipping class and is obviously skipping with her boyfriend. Normally I would have to go through channels and make sure that I'm on the right track to get her to stop and probably write her up and get her in trouble. I called her mom today and her dad answered. I talked to that brother for 5 minutes. He said, "Oh, really? We'll take care of this problem. The problem is solved." But you brothers already know this. The vast majority of times that I call a parent, it's the mother. And working at the school that I work at, very oftentimes it's a single mother. Rarely do I talk to a father. But when I do talk to a father, the problem is quickly solved. But so you're absolutely right, brother. It's about fathers being involved. But the truth of the matter is, it's hard for us to affect that. We're all raising our kids, but it's hard for us to affect that, and it's hard for us to affect a father being in the home of that kid that you're touching. So a program like my brother has up there, the gentleman on the show, those are terrific. It's just trying to get kids in those programs, trying to get in front of those kids. That's kind of where I see the issue.
Well, I can tell you that I've had great success in 14 years with getting the kids in the program. I can tell you that at certain schools, the administrators would refer the students to my program. They would call me in and said, let's do this. How about you join this gentleman's club, as a terry of mean, perhaps to get you on the right path. And the parents would sign them up immediately. I would give them an application. They would sign them up. And the student, when they come to my program, when they came to the program, I would tell them, just give me one meeting with you, and you'll see it'll make a difference in your life. And they joined and they stuck with it because we had some wonderful field trips, and we did a lot of things. One year we were able to go to the Washington D.C. to the White House. We actually toured the White House. We went to see the Martin Luther King Memorial, and so we've done some wonderful things. Some college trips to Hampton University. We've done some basketball, ODU, football. So I made it very rewarding for them, to get their attention, to get them in the program. And once I had them in the program, they were locked on. They gravitated towards it. And I can tell you that one school, we talked about the referral, but having this particular program, the referral decreased by 50%. The attendance went up. I mean, it affected the whole school, the whole student population, and it's documented in my book. I had an administrator that did a research, but went back 3 years, and they wanted to find out why was this year so special? What turned this year around? And they contributed. The Gentlemen's Club did that. It changed the whole school environment. So when you have a mentoring program that works, one of the problems I have is that you have a mentoring program that works, then get behind that, support that. Implement that in all the schools, and this is what they did not do. And so that's the sad thing that's about it for me. You have a program that worked, and the numbers don't lie. It worked at every school.
Good stuff. Hey, we're hanging out with the good brother Bobby Huntley, Reverend Bobby Huntley. And he's the author of this great book, The Shaping of Our Future Generation. You can pick it up on Amazon. You can pick it up at your melanated bookstore. We want you to pick it up at the melanated bookstore, definitely. We have
my website as well.
What was that?
My website as well.
Your website as well. He had to plug it. Plug your book, bro. Plug your book.
B. Raye Huntley Enterprises. It's at brayhuntleyenterprises.com.
Before you go in, Joel, I want you to hold on to what you're thinking, but I want to turn the tide for just a second. This is a hop-on show, so if you like to hop on like Jerry did or like the good brother Joel did, ask Brother Bobby a quick question or, pop on and give your thoughts on the topic. We're dealing with plugging the school to prison pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
We're plugging the school to prison pipeline. And, I just brought up some information from the ABA, which is the American American Bar Association. This is a group of lawyers. This is the American group of lawyers, American Bar Association. Their task force report showed that our youth are 3 to 5 more times likely to be suspended or arrested than their white counterparts for the same offense. So while we've talked a little bit about, we got some problems in our school with our kids. The pops aren't there, the parents aren't Bobby, I want to tap into your earlier book. You mentioned that you wrote a book called Mothers Please, the 8 mistakes that single mothers make that have impacted America. So before Joel gets his point, what in your book, Mothers Please, addresses this pipeline?
Well, first of all, it was a mother whose son was in my program who asked me to write the book. I had no intention of writing the book. It was the furthest thing from my mind to write such a book, because a lot of the books that I've written, like the first book I've ever written is called Italy and Back, A Black Man's Odyssey, which is an autobiography of my life and touring the Marine Corps. So I write books about my own personal experience and hoping to help someone. And so the parent had read that book. She said, Mr. I know that you're an author. Why don't you write something to help mothers? Because we need help also in raising our sons. Because the footnote to my book, Mothers Please, is that a woman can't teach a boy how to be a man. It's impossible. It's not in her DNA. She's never experienced being a man. So how can she teach her son how to be a man? It takes a man to teach a boy how to be a man. And so one of the things what was happening when I was at the alternative school as a dean of student, in my office, at my computer, in one or two of the classrooms, we had cameras in there, and I could see what was going on live. The camera was live. And so I happened to see this one particular student really being disruptive in the classroom, throwing paper on the floor, crawling, hitting other students and what have you. So I called that young man to my office. I then called his mother. His mother came. She came to my office, and I showed her a live feed to what was happening in the classroom where her son just left from. I said, understand, this is a live feed. This is what's going on in the classroom right now. I said, but I asked you to come because your son was crawling around on the floor, hitting other students, throwing paper, being disruptive. The teacher called his name several times before I called him to the office. She turned around and asked him, did you do that? He said, no. She said, well, my son said he didn't do it. I said, ma'am, I just told you this is a live feed. You're watching what's going on in the classroom. I'm telling you, I saw it with my own eyes. But she chose to take her son's position. And since a lot of single mothers, they do that. You know, that's my baby. I'm going to take my son's word over your word as an educator. And so that's why I titled my book, Mothers Please. So one of the mistakes that single mothers make is that they tell their son, you're the man of the house now. Your mommy's little man. And they said it because he's the only male in the house. And the truth is, he's not a man. Being a male does not make you a man. It takes huge responsibility to become a man. It's hard for grown men to be men, let alone put that title on a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old. So these were some of the issues that I was facing and challenges even at alternative school when you have these 16, 17-year-old boys who think they're men because their mommy said they were a man. So that's just too much to put on a child. And so that's one of the mistakes that single mothers make, is calling their 10, 12, 14, 15, 16-year-old son a man, because when he's confronted by a real man, there's an issue, because he thinks he's on the same level as that man, and he's not, because he's been misinformed. So that's just one of the mistakes that single mothers make.
Hey, Joel, what are you thinking? I know you had some thoughts. He's writing down his thoughts. Okay, he's trying to be prepared. Okay.
Look, I told you, I have 14 younger sisters. That's 10 girls, 12 girls, and 2 younger brothers. And exactly what Reverend said. My baby brother, he had 9 girls in front of him. I was going to the Navy. I came home some years later when he was older, and I'm gonna tell you something. I saw the future of this kid, that if he kept going in the same direction, he would be a destroyed man. They were doing everything in the world for him, doing his homework, waking him up in the morning, putting on his clothes. If he got in trouble, they covered for him. I mean, he couldn't do no wrong else because that was their baby brother. And because my mom was busy working and all this stuff, hey, it was okay. I told my mom, I said, Mom, I can't let my brother be raised like this. So let me tell you, he was 7 years old that summer. I got him when he turned 8. And that first 6 months, he had such a difficult time because he had a man telling him to do it. I was making him. You know, I was at the Navy at the time. I was making him get up in the morning at a certain time. I was making him fold his own clothes. I was making him iron his own clothes. He didn't like eggs. But you know what? I taught him food. The first thing was an egg. Boil it, fry it, whatever. But you're going to learn how to cook. You're going to learn how to clean. It took me 6 months. It took me 6 months to get him to understand that he's going to do it. It took me a full year for him to do it on his own. So it takes a man to raise a boy in the ways of what a man should be if it's a good man and doing the right things. And Reverend, you hit it on all cylinders. And when you said that, it put chills to my body, because everything you said, my sisters and my mom was doing for my baby brother. And I kept that boy until he turned 17. I shipped his butt off into the Navy when I was on recruiting duty. He's an old man. He got his family. And I tell you what, he tells me, bro, one of those days, man, you kept waking me up early in the morning, make me do this, make me do that, and writing down every day, because he needed that discipline, but also the important part of me being consistent. Being consistent was showing him what he needed to learn, even though he didn't understand it because he never had his man. His father died, passed away when he was like 5. So he needed that man role model, that man voice. He wasn't used to having a man voice raising Adam, because he would cry, he would break down and cry. But guess what? He got used to it. He started to understand it. He started to see the difference between me as a man raising him and his sisters as women babying him, taking care of him, and not holding him accountable to be responsible for himself. So definitely that. And on the other part, here, Chicago, you got a 10-year-old child being killed out in the street in a gang. They call him Little Killer. In Atlanta, you got a 14-year-old kid, black kid, who just recently killed another person in the parking lot or in the gas station. These boys, these are young boys who should be in school, but yet they're out at nighttime at 1 o'clock in the morning with guns. So, and if you go back and look, where's the father? Nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And there's a recent, we heard about the little kid last year, but this person in Atlanta, and that breaks my heart because I'm like, man, what can I do? What can I do to intervene with the knowledge and skill that I have? Like the person said, he was in the Marine Corps. He had that skill. So I was in the Navy 25 years. I want to take that same thing. And what I'm doing, let's educate and train our kids to start at a young age. Bring parents in. If they're single moms, well, let's bring them in because that's where it starts.
And let me share this, please.
And before you start, brother Reverend Bobby, hey Joel, you're having a hard time with your signal, so I'm gonna pull you off.
Oh, that's me.
But I truly appreciate everything that you said, man, and your insight and just sharing your story, man, because what you really just kind of drove home was one of the ways we can help plug the school to prison pipeline is by having a greater father influence in the schools. Hey, work on the signal and try to come back. Brother Bobby, Reverend Bobby, go ahead and make your statement, and then Brother Dunkley, if you have any thoughts, we'd like to allow you to tap back on in. And this is a hop-in show. If you're interested in popping on the screen, giving us your thoughts, talking with the good Reverend Bobby Huntley, please do so. Click the link, and join us. Go ahead, Bobby.
Thank you. One of the things I was going to say, it's kind of funny that I share when I'm speaking to parents. First of all, I want to make this disclaimer. At no time do I ever fault the parent or the mother, because I believe I was raised by a single parent, my mom, and my mom did the best she could. And so I know that the mothers are doing, and this is not for all mothers. We got mothers as a single parent that has put their sons through college and they're very successful, things of that nature. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those mothers that's having a hard time raising their sons. This doesn't apply to everybody. So I know there's some single mothers that's done a great job, but I'm talking about mothers in general that's having a hard time raising their sons. But one of the things I want to share with something funny is that when I'm speaking, I would tell parents, I can tell a child who's been raised by a single parent by one way. And I think the brother name is Joel. The shirt that he had on, a regular type of shirt, I would ask that student if they had a t-shirt on or something on under there and have them take their shirt off. And it's kind of hard to demonstrate it now, but if he was to take his shirt off, he would take it off one way. And as a man, we just take our shirt off. But a boy that's been raised by his mother, they would take their one sleeve at a time off and raise it over their head. And when I see boys do that, I know that they've been raised by a mother, because all they see is women take their top shirts off in that manner, as opposed to seeing their father come home or a man in a household just sling their shirt off in one swoop. And if you don't believe me, go home and watch. Ask your son take his shirt off if there's a single parent and see how they take their shirt off, because they'll mimic their mother as boys, opposed to mimic their fathers.
Oh, that's deep. That's interesting. Brother Dunkley, your thoughts, man.
I do fully agree that it is difficult for a woman to raise a man. Reverend Huntley talked about studying sociology, and sociology will tell you that we adhere to the person that's most prominent in our lives. And if a young man sees another man, whether it's his dad or his brother or just some guy out on the street, if that is the man that most impresses you, oftentimes that is the man that that young man becomes, or that's the path he kind of follows. So if a young man sees guys in the street, or kind of, you know, what the sociologist William Wilson called street people, that's kind of what he adheres to. So it is very difficult for a woman to raise a man. And you are also absolutely right. And that anecdote where you talked about a woman who immediately took her son's word, even though the evidence was there that what that son had done was one thing, but she immediately took his word because he said it. Because a lot of our women feel like, and I'm certainly not coming down on them either. I'm not coming at them negatively, but a lot of our women feel like they are the only one there to defend their sons. You know, I've run into that time and time again where a woman will say, "But that's my baby."
That's right.
But that's my baby. But you know, one thing I noticed that ends up happening is, and well, let me just say this. What this kind of leads to, back in the day when my father was young, when he was a young man, the model was that a man went to a woman and said, "I love you. I want you to come to my house and be my wife, and I'm going to take you to my house and we're going to start a family." What do you see nowadays? More often than not, a man goes to a woman's house. The woman already has a house.
Yes.
Whether or not she has a baby or whether or not she lives by herself, she already has a place. And oftentimes, especially in our community, the man is leaving his mother's house. And he leaves his mother's house and moves in with a woman.
Yeah.
So the roles of the traditional roles of manhood have reversed. And it's kind of been that way for the, you know, for the last maybe 20, even 25 years. You know, you hear songs from Aretha Franklin talking about, "I've got the money, I just want respect." You know, you're running out of money, you're running out of my money. That's been a thing in our community because our families have been fractured and separated. So there's a whole lot of stuff you got to put together there to understand why our young men end up going in the directions that they do. And, you know, but I fully agree with you when you talk about the relationship between mothers and their sons. It's really a difficult wedge to get into. And not to talk it too much, but when you do talk to our young men, you're absolutely right, Reverend Huntley, when you say our young men at age 15, 16, 17, and 18, a lot of them feel like they're grown already. They're doing grown stuff. They're smoking weed, they're having sex, they're staying out as late as they want to. And a lot of them are doing really grown stuff, and they've seen grown things. They've seen things that I didn't see till I was 24, 25. They've seen death. They've seen guns. I didn't see a gun till I went to the military. Well, I did, but side story. But you know, so they're seeing adult stuff. So they feel like when kids approach me, oftentimes they talk to me like they're my equal. You see what I'm saying? So they feel like grown men and they're 15. They can't grow a beard, but they've seen death. They've seen the sex act. Excuse me for saying it that way, but you know, remember when we were young and we'd go in our dad's sock drawer and find a magazine and we were all excited? Didn't see a real naked woman until I was well into my 20s. These guys have seen the full sex act because they have a cell phone.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So their minds are different than our minds when we were young. So they feel like at age 15, they can't grow a beard, but they feel like a full-fledged man. And
what you said,
decisions.
Thank you. And what you said about the example about the young man leaving his mother's house and going to the girlfriend's house and starting a family there, that's exactly what I write about in my book as well. But I like the fact that years ago, you know, K. Michelle wrote a song about can't teach a boy how to be a man. And
Can't
that
raise
I
a
wrote
man.
my book before that song came out. I don't want anybody to think I piggyback off of that. But that song came out after I wrote my book. But it's right to the core of what we're talking about. You know, she talks about I can't remember all the lyrics, but what you think I can raise him, but his mama couldn't raise him to be a man. So that's a very strong point.
That's right.
All right. Now, hey, with the school to prison pipeline,
Yes.
one of the main things deals with policing and the presence of police officers
Mhm.
in our schools.
Yeah.
So, when I did my little research,
Mhm.
it stated that police were first stationed in schools in significant numbers in the 1950s. Now, this was way before our schools were integrated. So in Flint, Michigan, police were placed in district middle and grade schools as a part of an effort to improve community relations with law enforcement. So this game about we need to improve community relations with law enforcement actually has been happening for decades. Now we all know it's a game, it's fake news, but they still keep pushing that down our throats. During the civil rights movement and post Brown versus Board of Education and school desegregation era, the presence of law enforcement in schools increased and then accelerated dramatically after the Columbine shooting in 1999. But interestingly enough, from the beginning, the largest deployment of school police has occurred in urban school districts of color, the black schools, that never had a school shooting. New York City has one of the largest school districts in the country and has over 5,000 school security agents. In Virginia, we call them SORs. Only 9 states have larger police forces. The increased presence of police in schools paralleled the increased surveillance of youth of color in segregated America. The increased presence of police in schools has not promoted confidence or trust amongst young people in many schools. Now, the thing that I think is intriguing about that is one of the concerns with having police in schools is that behaviors that could be handled in the school by the school with, you know, consequences that might teach somebody to become a better person are handled by police officers. Now, we're not anti-police. All right. Let me make that point. Most of us are not anti-police. We're anti abuse. But that's a totally different conversation. That's a totally different conversation. But we have found that schools that have had more policing in them are also the schools that have a higher amount of students who get sent to the judicial system. And that's not coming from us. That's
Mhm.
coming from the American Bar Association. That's coming from the lawyers that run America. They actually have a couple of recommendations to remove police from schools. And if they stay, they want to have memorandums of understanding that limit their role to only conduct that threatens or results in serious bodily harm. They want to limit school suspensions and exclusions only to conduct that really warrant somebody being removed, and to replace zero tolerance policies with some collaborative problem solving, emotional support, and restorative justice. What are your thoughts, gentlemen? What
Well,
are your thoughts?
let me jump in this real quick. I can tell you that the schools that I worked at, SROs were great. No issues with the SROs whatsoever. Uh, because I took a personal interest in them, you know, and I worked alongside of them. But part of my job was security assistant, so I had to work with them. So I established a great rapport with them, and so I never had a bad experience in my 19 years with any of my SROs. And so I only can speak my truth from what I've experienced. Okay, so no issue with the SROs, but I will say this: the school resource officers, police officers, um, they're limited to what they can and can't do. That building principal is the one that's overall in charge at all times. So if that
Mhm.
SRO is doing things they should not be doing, then that means that the principal has given them a green light to do so. I know that from experience. Principals are the one that's overall in charge of that school building, and the SRO has to report to that principal, and they're led by their directives. I know that for a fact. So when I see
Right.
Nationwide, what have you. You see incidents where a school resource officer handled a student a certain way. It's probably because they know that they had the backing from the school principal.
You bring a good point also, Reverend. And when we were first in this in North Rock High School, when we first got resource officers, it made us uncomfortable at first when I thought about it because there was already shootings in the school, gang fights. We were fighting in the school, and when we did get resource officers and plain clothes officers, because you didn't know who they were at the time, a lot of that stopped. And I don't recall any bad action from a school resource officer other than, hey, when they did undercover hits, people brought in guns, people had knives and drugs. Yeah, we heard about those things. And like Reverend said, the interaction actually was fairly positive because we had black school resource officers and we had old Caucasian school resource officers, and they presented a really good front at the school. I didn't have any I didn't have any negative reactions to these school resource officers. However, in the following city in Little Rock, there was some reactions because actually some of these officers had been undercover agents inside the city, and some folks recognized them because they busted boys and whatnot. So it was different. It was met differently at Central High School, Little Rock Parkview, but for the most part, I don't recall any negative interaction. A lot in 4 years.
All right, Brother Dunkley, your thoughts.
I mean, I may be in the minority here, but well, let me just say that the only reason for a school resource officer is not school shootings.
Right.
So, and actually, their impact is limited. Once someone starts shooting at a school, their impact is limited. I mean, they can try to take them out. At a school, at like the school that I teach at, Granby High School, there's one SRO, and he's a friend of mine, and there are certain things that he will not get involved in because he doesn't want to be sued or he doesn't want to end up on someone's YouTube video, someone's shortened YouTube video. And he said that to me, man. I don't blame him. So I do feel like SROs may be needed more at the high school level. I've seen an SRO arresting a elementary school student, and that's the optics there are bad. But there's so many things that adults cannot do with a child. There's so many things that we cannot do that we're just trying to find what we can do to control things. And I think what we end up forgetting, and I always keep it in mind as a teacher, that we have children there or students there who want to learn. But so please hear me on this. So very often we cannot focus on those students because we spend a lot of time with the students who don't want to be there. And people just think that schools are there to do everything, and we can't. We keep talking about our own personal experience. So I'm going to give you my personal experience. There are so many days that I cannot teach, today being one of them, because there's some craziness going on out in the hallway. Now, I would love to have security or an SRO or an assistant principal or someone take action, but there's so many different ways that adults' hands are tied. Okay, I've had kids physically attack me and end up right back in school because someone decided it was a manifestation of that child's disability for him to try to beat my brains out. That was a manifestation of his disability, and it probably was, but that child did not need to be in school. And every child that I was teaching that day lost. And it was black children, and every child that I taught that day lost. They got no teaching.
Right.
Okay. So yes, I am in it. The reason I'm in high school is I'm in it to win it for our African American males and females. But we forget about the kids who are just there trying to learn. So I believe one thing that we do need SROs. We need school resource officers. We also need security officers. I believe that we need some alternative school situations, some good ones, because there are kids who cannot, their disabilities or whatever, manifest themselves in a way that they can't sit in the classroom. They simply cannot. Not in a traditional classroom, not even in a non-traditional classroom. They cannot do it. But we keep trying to force that square into that round peg or that round hole, and it's not working. But on the question of SROs, yeah, I think we need them.
All right. Brother Bobby, you're the author here, man. What do you think, man? Do you think we need them?
Yes.
I don't.
Yeah. Okay, I do. I think just their presence alone. But see, like anything else that you have, I think you just don't put any type of cop SRO in the school. I think you have to really have someone that has the heart for the children, that's there to help. The SROs that I know got involved in helping me with my mentoring program, or going into the classroom, helping teaching or whatever. They made it a personal investment in with the students, not just showing up, just standing against the wall, putting their hands on their gun belt, but really getting involved and wanting to be a part of that school family, that school environment. I think if you have that type of attitude, I think it works.
All right. Well, we had some good experiences with the SROs in the beach, so I'm not negating that. I do think that the same role that a SRO plays could be funding 2 or 3 other positions that could provide us with greater coverage. And also, unfortunately, well, you know what? I want to step back because you're the author. You're the author of the great book that we're promoting tonight, and that's why don't you tell us a little bit about the book? Also, hey, look, this is a hop-in show. If you want to hop in like good brother Jerry Dunkley did and give your thoughts on the topic of ending the school to prison pipeline, we ask you to pop on in. But I want to give you another minute to promote your book. Tell us about the process, and then we'll get back into the discussion.
Thank you. Again, the shaping of our future generation, putting a plug to the school to prison pipeline. Majority of the book, I'm talking about my mentoring program, the Gentleman's Club, a character development mentoring program for youth, proven to be very successful. Every school that I've went to that implemented the program, it pretty much changed the climate of the school to some degree. It's been documented. The numbers speaks for themselves. There's some wonderful success stories from having this particular program in the schools. I'll share 2 of them with you if I might. One student at the alternative high school, and we keep in mind we had gangs there. Make no mistake about it. We had several gangs there at the high school. And what's interesting is when I was interviewed for the position as a work adjustment teacher / junior student, I was asked in my interview, if we hire you, will you bring your gentleman's club to the school? And of course I said yes, and I did. But I recognized there were gangs in the school, that we knew who the gang leaders were. And so I personally met with a few of the gang members or leaders individually to let them know about the program that we were going to start here. I even offered them to be a part of the program. And of course they declined. But I told them not to intervene or get in the way of the program. And so in a sense, we had an agreement, and they stayed away from the program. They did not hinder anyone from joining the program. One young man, when I first met him, he was a sophomore at the school, and I'm 6'6", little over 300 pounds, well, a whole lot over 300 pounds, let me be honest. But this young man was about as big as I am. He was at least 6'4", 270, 280. And within the first 2 days I was there, he was beaten so bad they had to call an ambulance. He was carried out of that school. And when he came back, he had some other issues, some disciplinary issues. One particular morning, he was sagging with his pants down. The principal was telling him to pull his pants up, and to make a long story short, he cursed out the principal. And so my first interaction with him was to bring him to my office and to settle him down, because the principal wanted him out of school. Call his mother, come get him, he's got to go. And so I'm talking to the young man, finally got him to calm down, had him to apologize to the principal. I told the principal I want him in my program. He said, no, he got to go. He's out of here. He tried to embarrass me. I want him out of here. And I reminded the principal that we had an agreement that when you hired me, I said that I need your 100% support with my program because I know how to run it. I know what it does. So I said, I reminded him of that. So he allowed me to keep that young man. The young man was not suspended. The young man stayed in my program. The young man became the president of my mentoring program. He became an honor roll student. He was able to go back to his high school and he graduated. And not only did he graduate, but a few years later, he graduated from Norfolk State University. This young man that was in a gang had been beaten down, had been very disrespectful, had been walking around perhaps bullying other students, but because he joined my program, I was able to mentor to him, turn his life around. And now I believe he's a correctional officer there in the state of Texas. And so that's just awesome. I beg your pardon?
I said, I say that. That's beautiful. Like, get power to that.
Yes.
Man, that's great.
Yeah. Let me share this other story real quick. Another young man came into my office, and I think he was a junior at the time. And when he came to me, he said, I want to join your program. I said, why did you want to join my program? And he raised up his pants leg. He had a monitor device on his ankle. And I was a little naive, I think. I was like, well, what's that? He said, that's from the court. I'm on house arrest. I'm like, really? And he said, yeah, I need to join your program. I need to better myself. I need to better my life. So he joined my program. He became my sergeant of arms in my program. We had officers, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, sergeant at arms. He became the sergeant at arms of the program. He ended up now he was facing, I believe, 3 to 5 years for house breaking in, but he wasn't the one that did it. He happened to pick up a couple of guys because they saw him driving. They got in his car, and it was proven that. But yet he was still being charged with the crime. But I wrote a letter to the judge. The young man also was being accepted to one of the colleges. I think it was Virginia Union College. So we presented all of that to the judge, and the judge said, "Who am I to stand in your way? I won't stand in your way." So he dropped all charges. The young man went on to college after being in my program. So this gentleman's club, and this is what I mainly talk about. When you talk about perhaps funding the money elsewhere, perhaps it need to go into mentoring programs that truly work, not just any program, but a proven program. And I think you know, Seiko, that I've also written a book, 5 to be exact, but I've written a book on how to start your own mentoring program called The Gentleman's Club. And all these books are available on Amazon.com and my website as well.
I say that. I say. So I want to bring up your book one more time.
Okay.
The Shaping of Our Future Generation, Bobby Raye Huntley. We call him Reverend Bobby. All right. Some last words, man. Some last words. We've had a great show. Had a chance to talk about some great aspects of how to plug the school to prison pipeline. And you know, your position has been throughout the show, and actually as long as I've known you, is presence and participation will plug the school to prison pipeline.
Absolutely. Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Let me share, and I learned so much from the students that I've had to come in contact with. And it was a privilege of mine to meet them because they taught me so much. I had when I was at Lansdowne Middle School as an in-school suspension coordinator, and when the students would come into my office or come into the classroom for being disruptive or what have you, and I would ask them what their problem was. They would say, well, they don't respect me. They don't respect me. And I'm a product of the 60s. So I grew up respecting my elders and saying, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And so I'm thinking to myself, who are you to want respect? You're just a child. The child needs to stay in the child's place. But this is a different time. And now these students, they not only want respect, but they demand respect. And so when I decided to just let me flip the script and let me meet them right where they're at and give them the respect that they're due as being a human being, then I began to be able to meet them at their level, and I began to change their mindset and let them know that to be respected, you have to earn to be respected. You have to carry yourself in such a way to be respected. And one of the things I like to share is my acronym for respect, RESPECT. You mentioned Aretha Franklin earlier. Respect, the R stands for recognizing, assessing, and understanding today's youth. E is for encouraging them to succeed despite their circumstances. S is for seeing through their eyes what the world has to offer them. P is to plan to lift them up, never tearing them down with words or deeds. E is equipping them with the tools needed to succeed in life. C is challenging them to love themselves by respecting themselves. And then T is trusting that the seed you deposit into them will bring forth its fruit in its season. And that has proven to be a success with this program and having respect for our youth, teaching them because they're children. They want to do good. They want to behave. They just need to learn how to behave and how to do good and reward them when they do those good deeds.
Well, it's time for a change, and the change that we're going to be making is plugging the school to prison pipeline. So we've been hanging out with the great author.
Thank you.
Of 5 books.
Yes. Yes.
Reverend Bobby R. Huntley. And of course, this is the Get On Code show where we talk about empowerment with a focus on Black empowerment. And I'm sure that with what you've heard tonight, we can find ways to plug that school to prison pipeline ourselves. Now, we really didn't deal with the governmental forces and the systemic racism and systemic oppression that we're addressing. And if you notice, we didn't negate it either. But we did say, here's a strategy. And the strategy was to be present and to participate.
Yes.
And he has a book that teaches you how to put on a gentleman's club the same way he did.
Yes.
For over 15 years. Is that it?
I did the program for 14 years. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to give you another year. We're going to
I
make
appreciate it. I'll take it. Thank you.
Hey, Code Keepers, go do something positive. Go do something that's going to empower us, because our young people are going to be our vanguard. And we definitely want to make sure that they're empowered enough to take over the world in a way that's going to be beneficial to us. Let's plug that school to prison pipeline. And also, we want everyone to go pick up that book as well.
Yeah.
We want everyone to pick up their book as well. The Shaping of Our Future Generation, putting a plug in the school to prison pipeline. Good brother Bobby, man, what any last words before we close out?
Yeah, thank you. Look, Seiko, I appreciate you, my brother. We've been working together for quite a few years. You've been great, and I appreciate all the work that you've done. I thank you for this opportunity. And I do want to share my website one more time. B. Raye Huntley, Raye, R-A-Y-E, B. Raye Huntley, Huntley, enterprises.com. B. Raye Huntley, enterprises.com. God bless you. Have a blessed evening.
All right, Code Keepers, y'all be at peace. We love you. Remember, I guess this is the most important thing. Get on code, share the code, teach the code, become the code. Our code is empowerment, and we love you. Peace.
To God be the glory.